Any opposed? Of course not. Thank you both for being here, and thank your relative boards as well.
Kia ora, thank you.
Looks like nice.
Thanks, Chair.
Kia ora. Right, so we will move straight to item 8, I think. Yes, which is this item. And I will move what is up there, but we'll have the staff present, and we may have some chairs recs. We're just working on what exactly that would look like. So we might pause after the presentation if something comes out, because I don't want to have us rushed into adding things that make things harder. So Alison and Peter, thank you very much. Kia ora.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so we do have a very short PowerPoint presentation to go through. So Alison will just take us through that, and then we can perhaps comment on the local board presentation and the amendments they're seeking. So we'll go through the PowerPoint first and take questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, so it is a short PowerPoint. The first slide here is just to go back in time a little bit to highlight that the provisions in the Hauraki Gulf Islands plan for the helipads under the restricted discretionary activity status has been canvassed with the committee and former committees several times, and that this proposed plan change recommendation of option 3 has come about as a result of the most recent resolution, which has focused on the restricted discretionary activity status and the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement role in that. So that's the context of this proposed plan change. And having undertaken the Section 32 analysis of several options, this option 3, if we can move to the next slide, please. Oh, sorry. This introduces changes to the matters of discretion, makes specific highlight of the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement and aspects of it which are relevant to the matters of discretion as they stand, which are noise and the visual effects. And it also makes changes in the criteria to particular aspects which, from the analysis, are looking as if they have the potential to be overlooked. They are nuances to do with natural and historic heritage. And so that has been added in there as it's separated out as its own particular item because it can be lost in the mix, potentially. What I would like to add at this point is that in these previous resolutions from the committees, the national policy standard for noise and vibration has been brought in, which removes the use of rolling averaging, so that has an impact on the rule package and the tightness or strictness of that rule package. So that's just the background and where the Section 32 has landed and the recommended option. So if you'd like, we can turn to the matters that have been raised in the local board discussion earlier.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks so much for working with the local boards on this and pre this meeting. If you could just describe, because I'm generally happy with what they're asking if it's sensible and doesn't delay things. So if you could just go through, I believe the marine protected areas, the policy 11.6 is already included as a matter of, well, anyway, maybe you should go through both of them and then see what we can do.
One matter which has been raised is the topic of vibration and whether that can be brought in. The NZCPS doesn't specifically mention vibration, and there could be a technical problem there with adding that. It is largely covered by noise, noise being a form of vibration. It may also sit outside the resolution that has brought this plan modification into effect.
But one point to note there is that you look at the text that we've added there, the scope of consideration for the listed matters includes the policy directives of the NZCPS on ecological values, cultural values, natural character, and I wanted to stress there, amenity and recreational enjoyment, which can be adversely affected by noise. So the issue of where you have noise and you may have vibration that is associated with that, we're saying that is a matter that can be considered as part of your restricted discretion. It's part of the matters of discretion. So we believe that amenity values and your recreational enjoyment and all those other things that were listed there, amenity will include, in a general sense, vibration. So if you're affected by something, if your amenity is being affected by any element, and vibration could be an element that affects your amenity, we're saying that is covered already.
And
Without having to actually specifically add the word vibration.
And the second point, 11.6.
11.6, if we scroll down to the, so these are the matters of discretion, and what we've added in there is a specific thing about the noise, effects of noise on natural and historic heritage, including Maori heritage, with particular regard to the NZCPS Policy 2, which is quite specific and lengthy about that particular matter. And we've also added sites of ecological significance, breeding sites, nesting areas of threatened, endangered or rare species, particularly indigenous taxa, with particular regard to NZCPS Policy 11. So where we are talking about areas that may be where there's as I say, ecological significance or areas of threatened, endangered or rare species, and one would have to think that if there is something on a register of sites in New Zealand that meet those criteria, they are covered here without actually listing whatever the particular thing. In a general sense, we're saying if they're ecologically significant or they're threatened, endangered or rare on any list, then this criterion would come into play. And in terms of flight tracks and flight path, we've got to remember, of course, that the RMA only controls, it doesn't control overflying of aircraft. And so once an aircraft is taken off and when it reaches a certain height, as the Environment Court has determined, they're trying to work out a threshold of when an aircraft is overflying and when it's landing or not overflying. Basically, we think that, so we can't, if an aircraft is high enough to meet the threshold of being overflying, obviously we can't control it. The RMA can't control it. But we do talk about, if you look at criterion 4 there, we say whether the noise generated by the helipad and so on, so as to not give adverse noise and amenity effects, including appropriate control over the type of helicopter, the flight procedure, which includes the flight track, and hovering and so on, the hours of operation. So I noticed there was a concern there about the track that helicopters may take, and we're saying that at least in these words already in the plan mean that we can consider that as a matter of assessment. What this whole package will do is make sure that these matters are clearly required to be addressed whenever a helipad application is put before the council. So It means that every applicant is clear, and our planners that are going to assess these resource consents are absolutely clear on what they expect to be included in an application for a helipad. And so, as I say, that's why we believe this is a reasonable option to put forward. It meets the tests under Section 32, and that's why we're recommending this option. But we believe, as is written now, we think it covers the concerns of the local board.
Okay, thank you. And so in the attachment A on page 40, because it includes the full list of policy 7, including the areas set aside for full or partial protection under other legislation, you think that the discussion around future marine protected areas, etc., can be now considered? Will they consider the whole policy 11? Or do we need to pull it out, as the board have asked?
We think it will, won't it?
Yes, I do.
Council, are there any other councillor sayers?
Yeah, probably, I don't want this to take us in the wrong direction in terms of complicating anything, but just for general understanding, Chair, about these helipads infrastructure, I'm assuming they need fuel. I'm assuming, the pads, the impact of the actual infrastructure where the helicopter lands. So I'm not asking to broaden our scope for today, but just a general understanding of typically when they apply for consent, are they applying for other permits, etc., for toxic or fuel or chemicals or whatever they need to maintain a helicopter and keep it flying?
My understanding is that at the moment the helipads are just a landing spot, and they don't generally include refueling facilities and so on. That would most of those, I'm sure, that would probably trigger another consent. But at the moment, I understand the helipads are just spots in which to land safely.
Cool, thank you. Councillor Darby.
So quickly, can I just explore the definition of what a helicopter is? How are we defining helicopter? And I guess I'm asking that question in the context of drones also having, the technology there is advancing very quickly. So does the definition of a helicopter also meet the definition of a drone in terms of the horizontal blade system that is used for propulsion? Are we capturing both here?
Yeah, I'm afraid I can't answer that at the moment, but we're clear that helicopters and helipads are an activity, or the use of helicopters via helipads is an activity allowed for in this plan, subject to certain constraints. So permitted activity in the rural areas for farming and that sort of activity, restricted discretionary in other areas, and full discretionary. So so there's definitions of what a helipad is, and there's a definition of so we know what a helicopter is, but I can't.
There is a bylaw.
There is a bylaw apparently that addresses drones.
Chair, I'm just exploring this because, we embark on work on helicopters, but helicopters are likely to be replaced by, heavy lifting drones. There are already heavy lifting drones that use similar propulsion systems. The power unit is different. Now, I don't want to find us in a place where we've actually overlooked the advent of large drones. They're already in market. So I don't want to be devil's advocate here. I'll be supporting the direction here today, but I did raise this 2 years ago about the arrival of drones, and now they've really taken off in terms of technological advances.
So my response is to reiterate that what we're dealing with today is an interim solution, as the board has carefully pointed out. This is an interim solution. Long term, we're going to deal with helicopters in a completely comprehensive way across all of Auckland, when we do the Auckland Unitary Plan review. So that's going to be the point at which we have a comprehensive look at all these matters relating to, helicopters, and we can bring in the issue of drones and so on at that point. And of course, we'll be doing some research, leading up to that review. But I can assure you that will be something that we will be considering when we do the Auckland Unitary Plan version number 2.
That's good. Pick it up then, and that's not too far away. So just in terms of it was the earlier slide, which can, the end words were which can be adversely affected by noise. So you list those ecological values, cultural values, etc., amenity, which can be adversely affected by noise. Have you explored how those sections, cultural values, ecological values, natural character, etc., it's not limited to just the effect of the noise. Altair talked about, the vibration, that's maybe coming from the motor systems as opposed to the noise. Downdraft, air disturbance, that sort of thing. The way it's written there, it looks like we're constrained by how those amenities, natural character, are affected by noise and not maybe other things that are generated from a helicopter, like, downdraft, etc. Can you just, and on the other part I was thinking of there is, how is intrusion? When a helicopter appears, you own a property and the next door neighbour's got maybe a helipad, the privacy, intrusion on privacy is enormous. How can that be factored in? So 2 questions here. How can intrusion on, say, privacy, which is amenity, be considered, not related to noise? How can it be considered in its own right? And can things outside noise be considered to impact natural character, amenity, etc.? I hope I've captured that succinctly.
Yes, in relation to the second issue, that amenity would, if a helicopter flew close to your property and it was affecting your enjoyment primarily because of the noise, then we would say, yes, that's covered under amenity and recreational enjoyment. So if you were sitting outside on your deck and someone hovered over your house, then they would be affecting your amenity. So we would say that's covered.
I agree, but it's not captured. That's if the noise is having the impact on amenity, not the presence of an overflying aircraft that is suddenly above my pool, or my deck, and I'm actually feeling like I'm private in my home, and suddenly I'm not private in my home. It's that enjoyment of the intrusion, not from the noise. I get what you're capturing by that last part on noise. What's that?
You just put this and knock it down.
I guess to go back a step, I mean, these matters of discretion that are in the plan currently have been the result of an Environment Court decision where all these matters were considered during the preparation of the actual Hauraki Gulf Islands plan as we have today. And so there was an Environment Court consent order in 2012 or 13 which actually addressed all those issues, trying to balance the amenity of people and the focus on economic activity from helicopters and the transport efficiency of helicopters and so on. So what we've arrived at is that balancing exercise with with the matters of discretion that we have at the moment. What we're trying to do is just sharpen them up a little bit to make sure that those NZCPS matters that are relevant, most relevant to noise and visual effects are strengthened and referred to specifically. So that's kind of the background. So this has come out of this Environment Court where all those matters were balanced primarily through that process. If you can hear the noise of a helicopter and the noise was affecting you, then I would think that you're also going to be, if the vibration was affecting you, then I think you're close enough to be affected by the noise. If that follows.
Get that?
So you can control, if you can control the noise, you're controlling the vibration to a degree. If that logic follows.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is by noise is almost not quite a proxy, but it is relevant in terms of vibration. As I said, if you were feeling the vibration, then generally you would be able to. The noise would be of a degree that you would notice it. It would be discernible. And what we're saying is, I guess, is therefore we have to consider what the noise is, and then by default you would be considering, or following on, you would consider that there would be vibration being considered at the same time.
Yeah, okay. It sounds like we've got a constraint there. So the other part for me is just to clarify, the aviation rules, they're controlled by Civil Aviation at a height over 500 feet in rural areas and small settlements, and then 1,000 feet in urban areas. So if a helicopter is coming in to land, that passage from 1,000 feet or 500 is a landing activity. The landing activity begins at the point at which you breach either the 500 or the 1,000. Is that right? And so,
As we understand it, that you're transitioning from overflying to landing
or taking off, yeah.
or taking off, and therefore you fall within the flight paths and whatever that we consider when we consider a helipad consent.
So there is scope to take into account the effects as soon as a helicopter breaches, say, 500 or 1,000, depending on what the locality is. There is scope to assess the impacts of that landing or takeoff. It's not an overflying activity, it's a landing or a takeoff. Can you just expand on that?
Yes, I think that's it in a nutshell. And when we look at your assessment criteria, number 4 there, and it's talking about the flight procedure and the flight track and the path, that would fall under that. I think as soon as it's, the only reason you'd be coming below the 1,000 feet or 500 would be that you're coming into land.
Yeah, maybe that's the section. Can I just check then? So is that the section? Because that gives rise to adverse noise and amenity effects. I know how these things get interpreted when they go before planning commissioners. It's, oh, well, the word was and, so it's got to be both. I just want to make sure that the wording is really accurate to ensure that things don't need to be coupled, that they actually stand in their own right, and particularly amenity. And amenity is, it's a big area of discussion. One person's amenity is very different to another person's amenity.
With the assessment criteria, they're providing the guidance of matters to be assessed, but it is actually the matters of discretion which you'd go back to, and noise, any aspect of noise where there's an adverse effect, whether or not it has been specifically highlighted or teased out in the assessment criteria, stands. It doesn't have to be in the assessment criteria to be considered.
Thanks, Jolie, there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've also still waiting for a resolution, just to let you know, so you're both not blindsided on vibration. Megan and legal think we can add it in as a, but we'll wait and see the wording, but we're just trying to get vibration in there. But I feel like the second point from the boards, 11.6 is definitely already in there. Just get you to switch your mic off, Councillor Darby. Thank you. And Councillor Leone.
Mine's very quick. I just wanted to ask two questions. The first one was around the Māori heritage sites, and I'm guessing that you have obviously had some feedback already from mana whenua. Can you just give me any information around that so far with the Māori heritage sites and what the specifics are on that?
Keeping it on, so it's not just
Yes, so it's deliberately, it's being kept wide rather than referring to any particular schedule. And the feedback has been taken from what the local boards have provided to us and what mana whenua, tangata whenua have spoken with the local boards as those particular matters, and so we're aware of it through that process.
Yeah, so just to add to that, so what we're making sure is the wording doesn't relate to just say anything that's identified in the plan as a site of significance is something that can be considered. We're saying when we look at policy 2 of the NZCPS, there are a whole range of things that can be considered. So we're purposefully not restricting it to sites that are identified in the plan, so that other areas, anything that is, and what happens is in practice is we send a list of resource consents to the iwi groups, and they can come in and say, well, yes, we're interested in this one because there's something that's not identified in the plan, but it is of significance to us, so you might want to comment on that. So these criteria enable that sort of action to happen.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is just probably following on from some of the concerns that were raised by Councillor Darby and probably more around civil aviation. The noise and the amount of obviously helicopters that could be going at one time, because I know you've mentioned there's 60 helipads in Waiheke, is that right? So, I mean, is there a way that we can even look at capping the amount that we can have per square kilometre or something like that in the future, or would that be part of the second review that you'd be looking at doing?
Two things. So as this issue has been dealt with over the last few years, what we have done is we've been talking to civil aviation, and so we presented a report in 23. So we had some comment from civil aviation, and at that point in time, there were no safety concerns. They reported to us with the location and use of the helipads on Waiheke in particular, and our own reporting that we've provided to the previous committee was that while there are a large number of helipads, only a few of them are used on a regular basis. So, so lots of the helipads, while the numbers look pretty, high, the amount of use is low on most of the helipads, but there are a few that have a high use. And part of our process when they get a resource consent is to monitor and require them to provide details of flights and so on, and we've been tracking that. We've done some research over that, and we reported that to a previous committee, and we'll probably do some more research on that going forward. Okay,
but I mean, as it sits now, it doesn't stop there from being, 10 or 20 helicopters in the air.
We can consider cumulative effect when a particular application comes in. So yes, that would be a matter that could be considered.
Okay, and just one last one. And again, it's probably something that would be looked at with the review, but how would we look at fining or something like that if they don't comply?
There are already provisions in the RMA to deal with enforcement and so on, or removing, taking away someone's consent if they're not meeting conditions. So there's already powers in the Resource Management Act that I guess we would have to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leone. Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Chair. I think that I'm just putting the rural hat on, Peter, in that in terms of I can't see this can accidentally prevent a farmer from having a helipad if it meets all the conditions. So I feel confident that it doesn't, but I guess just hearing from you that, that a reassurance along those lines.
The plan modification that's being proposed is for the restricted discretionary activities. There are a number of permitted activities, and that is your rural activities, your coastal fishing, some of the utilities activities are provided for as permitted activities.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Sure. Just got a question on vibration. In respect of vibration being associated with noise, well, yes, but isn't the more stronger correlation with the soil and the rock type and the like, which causes the vibration to shift across the land? If we're talking about, vibration in the ground, and how do we capture that? And is there, if I'm correct, a maximum, or is it an average that you said?
All I can say is that I don't have the expertise to answer your question about how vibration would work, but I understand from the chair that there is a consideration to add vibration into the wording here. So perhaps we should wait until we see that.
I don't know if we have them ready yet, but I can read out what we've been working on, if that, and do what? Megan.
Just the previous slide, Alison, does that have the current matters of discretion wording on it? Yeah, it does. Brilliant. So just on the bottom there, you'll see matters of discretion. You've got noise effects and then the visual effect, etc. So under noise effects, what we're likely to do is add the words and vibration. And so what that will do is require us to then consider what the vibration impacts are as well, because obviously vibration and noise often go together. But nonetheless, if there is vibration without noise, and I'm starting to get into third form physics, that can still be considered. We will also have some words around amending the Section 32 report. If you remember, that's the report that kind of provides all the evidence around it. So we will need to just tidy that up because it's a bit of new information. And look, we'll put it out for notification. And the hearings and the submissions are a great time to get some feedback about how this might actually work. And we'll refine that as we go through the process. So I'm sorry, we're just tidying up the words, but that's where it'll likely be put. And we are going to ask for some delegation for Councillor Hills and Dalton to possibly to sign that off, or even just the general manager, just to make sure we've got the word right. So we'll put that up shortly.
Cool. And just to acknowledge that I did blindside the team 3 minutes before the meeting started, so that's why it's taken a bit of time to get just that additional work done from the local boards today. So I hope that is a big move forward in that space. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair. I've always been told that any question is not a stupid one, but I may end up asking a stupid question now. I want to go to section 34 of the agenda, which relates to the 4 options, and then it's got at odds with the mechanism of the restricted discretionary activity. And my question is based on section 34, but it also takes into account section 46 when you spoke to the chair, Hanley, and she mentioned A, B, and C. And your 47 states that staff confirmed that the proposed plan change achieves both B and C, and the options for option 2 and 4 does not support point A. So that point A you mentioned under 47, does that relate to the 34, which is at odds with the mechanism of the restricted discretionary activity? I'm just trying to sort my head up around that when I read it. You've got the 4 options. In 34, you're saying that the best option is 3 because it is not at odds with the mechanism. In 46, Chair Handley suggests with their formal feedback A, B, and C. You've put in 47 that option 3 achieves at least 2, achieves B and C, and that does not support A, which is option 2 and 4. Shall I put it? I told you, I don't want to confuse you, but when you've got option 4, you've got 4 options, you've said under 34, it is odds.
I think we got
Yeah.
the gist of your question.
Okay, thank you.
So really it's about this activity is listed as a restricted discretionary activity. It means that you've refined the matters that you can consider when an application comes in to just those matters. And with a discretionary activity, anything is open to be considered when the application comes before the council. What we're saying is that if you included all of this document here as a matter of discretion, the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement, there are 15 or 16 pages of things that you would have to consider. You would have to be considering literally several hundred matters when you came to consider a helipad. And what we're saying is that is so extensive that is like a full discretionary activity because it considers a huge range of matters. It considers things like, examples, identify coastal hazards, natural defence against coastal hazards, subdivision, vehicle access, water quality, sedimentation, discharge of contaminants, surf breaks, heritage information. There's a whole range of things that harmful aquatic organisms. So you would have to be a planner would have to consider all those things when they considered an application for a helipad. And we're saying, no, the things that matter most here, and what the court has told us with the consent order, the things that matter most are noise and the visual effect of the structure or whatever it is to make the helipad. So we're saying, if we took this whole coastal policy statement, we're making it more akin to a discretionary activity and not a restricted discretionary activity. So that's the short answer. Well, the lengthy answer to a short question.
Yeah, no, I understand that and how. So for me, the option that is now before us achieves B and C as per the local board chair for Waiheku. Yeah? Okay, last part I chair, and that is the 75 consented helipads on both islands. Would this have any effect on those?
We think that the change we've already made by implementing the National Planning Standard 15 will have made a difference already. So that was the one where we took out the 3-day rolling average of noise. So that will have already mean some situations would not have happened in the way they have. So some consents that have been granted, for example, may not have been granted if that was in place at the time the consent was given. So, yes, we do think that raising these matters and putting them in the forefront of everybody's understanding of what has to be assessed means that it could mean that some helipads will be assessed. It's going to be a stronger assessment, if you like, of when a helipad is acceptable or not.
And, sorry, Chair, just last one. Do we know how many are in the pipeline for consent? Helipads?
I don't have the information, but we can find that out. But I don't have the information to hand.
I think the information we do have is 2, I think.
Yeah, I saw the presentation. I didn't know whether there was others. Yeah, okay. Kia ora, thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. I'll just get both of you to step back and we'll go to the debate. I'll just get those, we'll give you a couple minutes, seconds to look at the additions. So the additions there add subject to amending the plan change to enable the consideration of both noise and vibration, so that adds that in. And then the section 32, which is currently available, will have the vibration added, so that's why we have to put in subject to amendments to reflect recommendation A. And then we'll just delegate. I don't think we need to delegate to Councillor Dalton and I think it's clear in here, but I'm sure an email can go around to us to make sure, but I think it's fairly clear if we just get it out, and that seems clear to me. Are there any comments? I'll just quickly start. First of all, thanks again to everyone, the community, the local boards who've been keeping me updated and giving really good feedback every time and working with the staff to get something that is workable. That was the same with the NPS 15 last year, which added those restrictions. And I think also, the issue was that there was only noise and visual effects before, and this will significantly improve what has to be looked at. There's the things that we would love for it to be looked at, but this helps add, obviously, ecological sites, obviously breeding sites, nesting sites of threatened, endangered and rare species, and then Māori sites and cultural sites of significance as well. It will significantly improve the ability for planners and consenting team to judge if these are fair and reasonable to be put in a certain area. It won't always stop everything, but it will mean that there's much higher threshold, much higher. And I think that is really, really positive move forward. Obviously, with the unitary plan review next year, when we do the whole of Tamaki Makaurau, then that will be something that people can submit on again. But I think this is a really good step forward. So thank you to Councillor Lee, the local boards, everyone for the clear steer on this, and thank you very much to the staff. It is very complex. And of course, this is only the beginning of the process. There will be hearings. People can put their thoughts forward, and the commissioners may add even more. You never know, but that's always the case with our hearings. Right, is there any other speakers to this? Councillor Lee.
This matter, this issue, this concern has been around for some years now, particularly on the Gulf Islands, but not as any reader of the Herald, for instance, would appreciate, not just the Gulf Islands, and we'll be hearing more about helipads, I guess, in the next few months, which are not related to the Gulf Islands, but remain a matter of serious public concern, controversy. In regard to this matter, this became generally a matter of general awareness back in 2022. And I think there was an article, so much so that there was an article in our Auckland written by Megan Tyler acknowledging the problem and advising that a report would be completed by the end of that year. Late in November, I raised the issue at this committee and foreshadowed that I would be moving a motion at a forthcoming committee. And this is not mentioned in the report, in March 2024, I proposed an amendment which was carried, which essentially committed staff to looking at a planned change to include prohibited activity. This was not done. In fact, all the reports we got back from staff and consultant planners was that a prohibited activity status would be legally impossible, quote unquote, which is not true. But anyway, when this issue was first raised in the Gulf Islands, I'll just make one more point. In my ward, unfortunately, helipads are a concern on Great Barrier Island, 100 kilometres away, on Waiheke Island, and of course in the western bays of Auckland Central, so all over the Waitemata and Gulf Ward. And the really strange thing about it is that on the Gulf Islands, the activity class is as permissive as you could possibly get, or almost yet. And that has resulted in a boom in the business of helicopter planning and helipad planning and consenting. In the city, the rules under the unitary plan are much more restrictive, but there's still, I understand, helipad applications. One in particular has drawn 1,400 concerned submissions. So that's 2 levels higher than what we're dealing with in the Gulf Islands. Quite discriminatory, actually. And so the concern is that the amendment to the plan will mean that when it comes to restricted discretionary, the restriction will be eased a bit so that the planners and the decision makers can have regard to the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement of 2010. I can't see any reference to Section 7 and 8, and my apologies if I missed it, Section 7 and 8 of the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park Act, which is also, according to Section 9 of that Act, a New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement. But anyway, coming back to, in regard to the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement, in Section 104, as the planners well know, the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement is something that decision makers must have regard to anyway. So I have to say that this amendment or this plan change, despite all the talk about things are going to be tougher now, the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement provisions, where they're applicable to helipad consent applications, should have had regard to all along. And it's almost as if staff are saying, no, well, we just ignored Section 104 and just carried right along. But regardless, the effect will be the same. The Waiheke Local Board, and this is where the idea came from members of the Waiheke community, in regard to the New Zealand Coastal Policy Statement, 2010, that is.
We'll just get you to finish. We'll just get you to finish up, Councillor Lee.
I think this is so important, Mr. Chair. the Waiheke local board, in regard to this change, also requires that vibration be included. And what I would say about this, I'm not going to vote against it because it's not going to do any harm. It ain't going to do anything really, but my real concern is what's going on. Why is the council so resistant to doing something meaningful to regulate this the cause of this problem, particularly as when the amendment to my notice of motion in March last year was carried and the substantive aspect of it was voted down.
Councillor Lee, we're nearly at 7 minutes.
Council
I
planners
move
had
an
a report.
extension of time, Mr.
Had a
Chair.
report from an expert planner, an expert
Point of
in
order.
helipads, saying that having regard to the
Point
New
of
Zealand
order,
coastal
Councillor
policy statement is
Somebody's moved
meaningless.
a motion, it's been seconded, it probably does need to go to the vote, because you can't just assume the motion is moved and seconded and passed.
Yeah. I
By
just would
moving
ask
second.
if you could take 30 seconds to finish up, Councillor Lee. I'd rather...
Point of order, speaking to that point of order, 1.4.1, a vote seems to have to be taken for extending time limits, doesn't it?
And speaking to that point of order, the tradition and custom and practice has been once it's been moved and seconded, the person has just been allowed to continue. That's been the practice of the last 10 years. So this point of order for Mr. Darby hasn't actually occurred before.
Okay.
And I would say the same courtesy should be extended to Councillor Lee here.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. I am trying to be fair, but if we have extensions on everyone's time, we're already given 50% extra than most people have. So I'm giving Councillor Lee some time to just wind up, but he is well over the normal time, and I think it's fair. We're always fair around here to allow people to have their 5 minutes, and we're at nearly 8 minutes, although we're interrupted. So, Councillor Lee, if
Speaking
you'd
to the
just like
point of
finish.
order, because I was the one that actually tried to move an extension of time, and speaking to those points that you're making of fairness, I just want to ensure, and as you, sir, as chair, and I say this respectfully, you have a habit of speaking after everyone has spoken, which means that you get more time. Is it fair then for members of the committee?
That's not a point of order, Councillor Fletcher.
Well,
Okay, well, how long would you like the extension of time to be?
I move 2 minutes extension of time.
Cool. Do I have a seconder?
I want, in regard to this...
So we have to then vote on that, if that's what... So,
Maybe we can have a vote on questions too, when some of the people ask questions for about 10
okay,
or 15
none of this
minutes.
is in order.
No.
I've already, what I was trying to do is I listened to the point of order to move. I then just said, Councillor Lee, it would be nice if you finished up because we're already 2 minutes over. I was trying to be fair. And then we've created this whole, I wasn't trying to be unfair to Councillor Lee, but then we've had this back and forth and an extension for 2 minutes where we've already had 2.5 minutes over 5 minutes. So if you could just have 30 seconds to round up. Thanks, Councillor Lee.
I think the great flaw in this is that the activity class, which is extremely permissive, is not being touched. The activity class is being titivated with requirements that are already an obligation when it comes to decision-making under RMA. So in many respects, this is kind of an empty gesture, particularly so that even the modest request, I believe, from the Waiheke Local Board for vibration to be included in the criteria, it has not been. And in effect, we're not really talking about heritage sites. And the effect on ecosystems will no doubt be argued by experts, like the expert who told the council before last year's debate that the provision would have no impact on the helipads that the person was working with. And the staff knew about that. They didn't tell any of the councillors that they had that report. But I have it here and I'll copy it to people if they want it. I want to go back to to what Gary Taylor of the Environmental Defence Society told the council back in 2022. The Environmental Defence Society said once the planner's workload lightened, maybe around August 2022, they must crack on and prohibit any more private helipads on Aotea Great Barrier. The best way to do that is a short, sharp plan change that would take immediate effect. It's not a complicated plan change, and Gary Taylor knows what he's talking about in these matters. Instead, the council did nothing. The number of helipads on Aotea Great Barrier more than doubled.
Thank you, Councillor
And in
Lee.
Waiheke the same. And so this will continue, and I'm afraid...
Councillor Lee.
It's not, you've shut me off, but I will tell you it's not good enough. Thank you.
Okay, that was, I said 30 seconds, that was an additional 2, that was over 10, that was over 10 minutes, so that was 2 extensions of time. Councillor Filipaina. Councillor Filipaina, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. While reading the agenda, I ended up also rereading an article that was in July of 2022 from Megan in our Auckland, which helped me sort out a lot of stuff around helipads, and that's going back to 2022. So that particular article, the only thing that was confusing for me with today's agenda, I've now established, and Peter, to you, and Alison, thank you for clearing that confusion in my head. I will be supporting this. The helipads, in the report, was a little bit shocked when I saw there was 75 consented helipads just in our 2 islands. And I was pleased, Peter, when you said that the effect prior to this recommendation, that would have had an effect on those. I don't know how much, as Councillor Lee has put in with his whakaaro, his kōrero just now. I don't know how much of an impact. I'm hoping that when this goes through, that the impact on those that are in the pipeline, and there was mention of 2, and I know that Chair Handley had mentioned that in her presentation to us. So I just want to acknowledge the staff, but also want to acknowledge you, Councillor Lee, in regards to pushing that and putting in front of us again. And, you know, as I said with the report in our Auckland from Megan, July 2022, it was happening there. That article was a good one. And but Councillor Lee, you're now pushing this in front of us, and it needs to be pushed in front of us. And I'm just glad with the recommendations that are coming through that we support that moving forward in the interim, and hopefully it will have an impact on the any applications that are pending for helipads. So just wanted to acknowledge, and also the work that, Chair, I know you've done with the local boards, and that's my last acknowledgement is to our local boards from Great Barrier and Waiheke. So, yeah, we'll be supporting it. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Darby, I've got you as the last.
Thank you. Look, I'll be supporting the direction that's on the table here today. I still don't think it goes far enough, though. I guess I'm in a similar camp to Councillor Lee there. I mean, I've been abreast of this issue for some years, you know, in the role that you now have, Chair. And it's been a difficult one to navigate, no pun intended there. But I think the Auckland Unitary Plan, where we pick this up more holistically, will be the place, yes, but that's a long way off. And I do signal the importance of making sure that we capture passenger and freight drones at that time. Passenger drones are available on market now. And what my concern is that the helicopter rules actually don't cover the possibility of people going, well, the rules have been made too hard for helicopters. I'll look at my new passenger drone that I've just bought from China. You know, they're available in market right now, and I'm really concerned that we're focusing on tightening up the helicopter rules, but the passenger drone or the freight drone is going to replace it. And so I would ask that in the definitions section of this, that helicopters also include the definition of drone. The lifting systems are the same, because a helicopter definition is about the rotors. That's what it's about. The similar rotors apply to drones. So I'd like to see that picked up at this stage, not wait for the Auckland Unitary Plan, because I think there's a risk there. But look, for the life of me, I still cannot see why people want to apply for a helipad when they're in proximity to the Rosedale heli station, the heli station up there, or Mechanics Bay, or Clarice on Aotea. I just do not understand it. I understand those in rural areas, farmers, etc., needing helipads, but in urban areas, I just do not get it. And I think when we review the Auckland Unitary Plan, we need to close that down almost entirely.
Thank you, Councillor Darby. Deputy Chair, Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Darby does make some good points about the future, and Councillor Sayers was just showing me a photo of a helicopter passenger drone. And so, yeah, preparing for the future is going to be important. Look, I just want to acknowledge the two chairs, Chair Hanley and Izzy Fordham, for continuing this on for so long, for really getting into bat for their communities. You know, communities should be empowered to be the masters of their own destiny, and the stewards of where they live. And Izzy and Kath have made sure that they have brought their community's voice here, and they have continued to advocate for the change that we're seeing today. It's an interim change. It's a holding space for a full review when we get to the Auckland Unitary Plan. But I think based on the previous resolutions, we've landed in a good space. Chair, thank you so much for working so hard on getting the amendment to add, or the Chair's rec, to add noise and vibration. There was a difference of opinion, I believe, between officers' advice and how the Chairs felt about that, and it's a good outcome. So I know you had to go between legal and officers, and you've landed it there. Appreciate that. So I too am pretty shocked, like Councillor Filipaina. There are so many helipads between Waiheke and Aotea Great Barriers. It's like 75. That's crazy. But again, let's think about the communities that are living there all of the time. And let's think about the care and attention they want to bring to their environment, to the marine life, to their living. And too often, we are making decisions at a higher level for communities that should be having more of a say of what they have in the areas in which they live. And that is going to be different across the 21 local board areas that we have. And may our policy that we set be flexible enough to allow variation so those communities can live as they choose to live in their space, so that every community is unique and that they can be guided by a policy that gives them the freedom to choose. So thank you for all of the work, Alison and Peter. I know it's been challenging and it's been a bit of a long haul, but we've got there. I wouldn't say everybody is happy, but that doesn't always happen. But the majority are happy, and it will be, I'm confident, passed through today. So thank you for that negotiation and the work that you've done on that. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. And yeah, just to round up thank you for all those views. Obviously, we are doing something here. The big compliance changes that happened, the MPS 15 last year, additional, and this work will move us much closer to regulating and reducing. We do know prohibited is much harder, and we do know that drones sadly sit with the Civil Aviation Authority now, but we have really good relationship with them and the team, and they're constantly working on those changes when they come. So we will get as much information as we can for the next council for that review. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Oh, I'll just have that put down as unanimous. Thank you. Right, we might just have a 5-minute break to everyone stretch their legs, and then we'll go back to item 9.